Hey everybody. So I reviewed a lot of movies, video games, TV series, and I feel like I've really left something out. Books. When I was a kid, I always had a book in my hand, a book in my pocket. Everywhere I went, I had something to read. The greatest thrill for me as a kid is when my parents would take me to the bookstore and I'd see if I could trick them into buying me two books instead of just one. Any long drive that we had, say for Christmas to go to Grandma's, I was always reading a book late into the night in the car. When I was a little kid, I remember reading so late that I'd read until the pages got blurry, and then it's like, all right, well, I guess it's time to sleep. I even convinced my parents that I was afraid of the dark, which I wasn't, so that I could have my closet light on so that I could turn around in bed and read as late as I wanted to without them making me go to sleep instead. And whenever I'd hear them coming, I'd put the book down, make it look like I fell asleep reading, and then as soon as they left, I'd go back to reading. The point is, I love reading. I read all the time. I read pretty much every night now. As an adult, I spend maybe an hour or two every night reading, which is not as much as when I was a kid, but still, it's what I've got time for these days. So what I'd like to do is talk about some books that I like. Now, with books, I don't really have anything to show you. I can't put up clips of a book. I can't even show you how good the art style is, like if I was doing a comic, because they're just words. So I'm going to try and keep them as short as I can, despite my propensity for verbosity. I'm going to try and keep them relatively short, except for this first one where I've got this whole intro of book reviews, but I'm going to review some books. Now, you will notice a trend in my reviews. My preferred genre seems to be fantasy. It just turned out that way. I like fantasy because they get to create an entire world full of new characters and new rules. How does this world work? Does it have magic? Does it not have magic? What kind of creatures live there? It's a greater escape. But I don't just read fantasy. So I will include books from other genres. I'm just saying you will notice more fantasy books being represented than other genres. It's just who I am. So for our very first review here, our first book review, I want to talk about David Eddings' The Elenium, because it is the first epic fantasy series I ever read. I was very young, and it hooked its snares into me, and I adore this series still to this day. The Elenium is actually 3 books. Let's see if you can actually... it's the Diamond Throne, over here. Haha, the Diamond Throne, the Ruby Knight, and the Sapphire Rose. It's a trilogy. But they have actually released it in one book. So all 3 books are in here. So 3 books for the price of 1, which is not a bad deal, all things considered. I love the Elenium. The basic story is the queen has been poisoned in an attempt to take over the throne. The court mage, I suppose, has placed her in suspended animation until a cure can be found. The only person that can be trusted to find this cure is a knight that had previously been sent away in disgrace. That knight is our main character. His name is Sparhawk, and he's a little older. I can't remember if he's in his 40s or his 50s. But the point of Sparhawk is he's just past his prime. He's a little older than a hero necessarily should be. But he's the only hero we got. And I like that. I like that the hero isn't the prophesied child, and the hero isn't this, in his mid-20s, bloom of youth, ready to go and save the world. No, it's an older guy who's lived life and been beaten around a little bit. He's got a broken nose, and he's got some severe scars from an ambush that happened when he was younger. So I like that element to it. So Sparhawk has to save Queen Elana. The biggest problem is there is no known cure for this particular poison, if they could even figure out what poison it is. And for every month that the queen is in suspended animation, another loyal knight dies. The spell is being maintained by their life force. Now, they volunteered to sacrifice themselves to save the queen. But there is a ticking clock. Because when all the knights who were part of the ritual die, then the queen will too. And all of these knights will have died for no reason if you haven't saved her by then. Sparhawk is joined by a cavalcade of characters. Sparhawk belongs to a religious organization of knights. So technically he is a religious figure, even if religion doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the defining trait of his character. They are all religious characters, some more than others. And there are 4 orders of knights, each with different kind of characteristics and personality types. There's a more religious sect, there's a more irreverent sect, and you get 1 knight from each of those joining him. You get a child thief joining him. You get the court mage, who's actually their instructor in magic, because the knights can all use a little bit of magic. A childhood friend, a squire, and a mysterious girl. All join together to quest to find the cure for this poison. It's a great story. I like the villains a lot. The villain is another more accurately disgraced knight. And I think he's fantastic. As I said, it's a quick trilogy of books. It's very good. I found the characters very realistic, very identifiable. I like these characters. I feel like I know them a little bit. They all have unique personalities and voices. I will say this, there is actually a sequel series. There is another trilogy that takes place after this one, and it's okay. I mean, anytime I read this one, I do read the sequel afterwards because I get to spend more time with the characters. But a lot of it rehashes some of the stuff you see here. So, this is really great. The sequel is serviceable. But these 3 books, if you're looking for a different kind of epic fantasy, where it's not the prophesied child saving the day, but instead it's a world-weary knight, this is what you want. And interesting, there's an interesting part. The 3rd book actually spends a bit of time dealing with politics. The knights have to get involved in a political election of sorts. It's church-related. They have to get involved in a church election. And instead of going out and slaying monsters, they actually have to get into politics for a little while. Which I like because, again, it's different. It goes down just a different path for a little bit. The dialogue is witty, it's clever, the plot is good. The Elenium. If you like fantasy, I recommend the Elenium. Anyway, that's it. I said I was going to try and keep these short. I'll try and keep them shorter than this in the future. We'll see what happens. I'll see you guys next time.